Hey everybody, welcome back. I thought I'd come back to my same little spot out here in the woods, and I have seen some videos talking about what's wrong in America, why the American dream is dead, and in many ways it really is. And they've cited some things that were basically the end result of the way our culture, the way the policies are going, and I thought I'd touch base on that a little bit. First of all, basically financially, in many ways, everything has shifted and changed. For those of you that are in your 40s, like myself, maybe in your 30s, you begin to realize that a lot of things have completely shifted. My first video I ever uploaded on YouTube kind of touches on this, how everything has changed. I mean, the feel of everything has changed. But let's talk about some root causes here. Nobody really, for the most part, has careers anymore. Everybody works short term and then they move on to something else. Now, how in the world did it get to that point? How did that happen? Well, during the 1980s, we had something called private equity start to develop, where they would buy up businesses using a ton of debt. They'd acquire a bunch of debt. They'd buy up a business. They would shift the debt from their books onto the business, milk the business for everything that they possibly could, then declare bankruptcy on the business, leave with whatever funds they could get, and pretty much anybody that was connected in that company or business that they had bought up is completely screwed out. Their pensions are gone, lives ruined, that business is now gone. Everything that was connected to that business in communities where it had a foundation, destroyed all of that, and people just basically running away and collecting that money. Well, that was on a much smaller scale then, and over the course of several years, that has grown to something much bigger. These private equity firms are now buying up smaller family homes, seizing those homes, and once they bought up a whole bunch in an area, collectively raising the rent, because they're not turning around, fixing it up and selling it, they're just buying them and outright owning them. And some of the homes in the area where I'm at, they have about 30% of the homes, and it's estimated that within the next 5, maybe 8 years, they will have 60%. And there's no way to really undercut it, because if you try and figure out another way to get more affordable housing or undercut their system, they find a way to legally sink you by making whatever competition you put together completely illegal. You're not going to be able to undo it that way, because the free enterprise system is blocked by them having lobbyists, having lawyers, and making sure there's no other way. Some other big things that are going on is those private equity firms, those LLCs that are buying up everything, you trace them back far enough, you run into what people are referring to now as the big three: BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. 3 companies that own enough shares in each other to where technically, if you're really honest about it, they are one company. They own 89% of the S&P 500. They pretty much own everything. They have their hands all up in the government. And what you begin to realize with all of this is that is why everything is collectively going up in price. Nothing's going down. There is no real competition, because if they own enough of the market and control enough of the market, you don't really get any competition that's going to rise up and undo that. So it's going to take a huge amount of effort to change all of that. Then on top of that, we've had major cultural and societal changes happening. The uprising of the hookup culture, the uprising of just blatant hedonism, and the huge lie that none of that will hurt you. That if you desperately chase after hedonism and gratification and hooking up and running around doing all of this stuff, that it won't, on a psychological and spiritual basis, harm you, and that somehow that not only doing that won't harm you, it won't condition you to think and behave that way in ways that would destroy families down the road. Think about that. Let that sink in for a minute. If you divide up the trust between men and women to a point to where they can't rely on each other, they can't trust each other, they can't believe in each other anymore, then what in the world do you have left? There's no family unit if men and women can't build trust together. There's no family unit. And that really comes to the next point that I would make, that I believe that this is intentional. This is an intentional sabotaging, especially of the family unit, to sink the middle class. Why? So that you'll end up with bunches of Western nations and major portions of the world becoming the working poor. If we don't have a unified family unit that has children that are strong and intelligent and grow up in the best atmosphere that they possibly can, which if you study statistics, it clearly shows that children that come from two-parent households that are stable and secure, and the husband and wife, they actually trust each other and work well together, and they have the opportunities from jobs and careers that will allow them to raise the children in an environment that is stable, that the children end up coming out way better than they ever would under any other circumstance. And there is a collective and deliberate attempt to sink this. Now, I've watched documentaries talking about people like the Rockefellers that were supporting the movement of feminism, and their reasoning behind all of that when revealed in private conversations they had with people, including one time where one of them was discussing something with a reporter. He said, "You think that we did that for women's rights? We did it so we could double the tax base, so we could break up the amount of cohesion in the home, because we need more control over everything. And since both parents are working, now we can send the kids off to school and they'll be good little factory workers because they are trained at a school rather than being trained by their parents." And that is pretty devious, twisted, demonic, evil, whatever you want to call it, but it's absolutely destructive. So all of these things are just adding to the utter and complete decay of this society. For many of us, building a business on the side, attempting to do whatever we can to start an internet business, start other businesses. This would be my third one that I've started. That's some of the only ways that you can really get around it. I mean, you're not going to return back into the workforce and get any type of meaningful arrangement where you're going to make good money, where you're going to be treated well. Unfortunately, the workforce, because of everything that has happened that I've described already, you're not rewarded for sticking around. You're not rewarded for loyalty. In fact, they're looking for every reason to cut you loose, bring in somebody who's going to do the job for less money, and figure out a way that basically, as management shifts, as every time the company gets bought out, they'll end up firing 2 other workers around you and keep you around because you're working harder, add their jobs to yours, and pay you nothing extra or very little extra for doing essentially the jobs of 3 people when you're only 1 person, literally grinding you to a point to where you eventually give up. And then they bring in a fresh crop of other people that are desperate for work and literally repeat the same process on them, sinking them to a point to where you just end up with a whole society of people that are completely demoralized, way overworked. They're not making enough money to really thrive. And they just become, like I described earlier, the working poor. It can sound like it's a bit overwhelming. There are ways to try to build and thrive. Begin to believe in yourself. Begin to develop yourself. And when I say that, I mean learn about side hustles, learn about businesses that you can begin to grow where you're doing something that you love and that you appreciate, and then eventually you can build to a point where there's some level of financial freedom. You can also reduce your debts and begin to realize that there's a lot of things out there that they will push you with advertising to try and get you to buy as many things as possible. And this just comes back to the hedonism thing taking over the whole society. It's now at a point to where there's so much advertising and we're being bombarded with it. And I highly recommend, if you can, cutting back your social media. If you want to start to break free of this, and that's really what this part of the video is going to be about. It's not just all the bad news and here's everything that's going wrong. If you want to break free of it, curb your social media use. Start curbing it. Like I have a film company. We do all sorts of film work and other things like that. I'll go on and I'll post and I'll do stuff in the groups and I'll do everything I can to avoid even scrolling, because you get hit with all this stuff that's trying to manipulate you on an emotional and mental level to buy things, to feel like you're inadequate if you don't have this or have that. And the onslaught is very real. If you do any research into it, you become very aware that all of that stuff is basically like a psyop. It's not just trying to manipulate how you look at the world politically or on a level of personal relationships, but trying to turn you into a permanent debt slave and a customer that's buying things that you cannot afford. So breaking free of that social media. staying clear of, like, if you have to be on there to post something, use it as a business. Use it to your advantage. Don't be somebody who is now a debt slave and a consumer. Be somebody who is very, very smart and thinks about, do I need these things? Do I need what they're trying to push? Because you don't. And the best way to avoid it is avoid being programmed by it in the first place. So don't be somebody who's just mindlessly scrolling. Get out, touch grass, get out into the fresh air like I'm sitting out right here, and join me for a talk. Let's do this. Let's use it for something that's going to change your life. I find myself actually on YouTube absorbing podcasts, absorbing talks from other people, and really, really focusing on the fact that you need to be programming your brain with stuff that's going to change you. Not just taking action, because you need to be programming yourself with that stuff too. It's like if you listen to depressing music, you're going to be depressed. If you watch TV all day, you're going to get hit with tons and tons of manipulative commercials, stuff that wants to turn you into a consumer and a little debt slave. And you're just basically wasting your time watching everybody else's story and everybody else's creativity. Become somebody who makes that. Somebody who creates either your own content, your own business, you sell your own products, you do something like that, and start small. Don't try and come out the gate thinking that you're going to spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars doing this. Start small, grow yourself and develop yourself, and focus on the fact that along this journey, you're going to become a different person. You're going to become somebody who's unplugged from all of that and a very different version of yourself. And I'm becoming more and more convinced every day that is the only way. That is the only way you're going to make it. That any of us are going to make it are those of us that are aware of this and are trying to do something like this and spreading this kind of message, because it's invaluable and so utterly important that you get this through your head. You are the only one that's going to be able to change any of this, and you're going to have to approach it from this way that I'm describing right here. You're not going to be able to do it for the most part through the system, and as the years go on, probably less and less. Now, you can say, well, I'm hoping that current administration and other things are going to change the way things are. Maybe it will to a certain degree. But they're fighting an uphill battle against very entrenched corruption and fraud and, let's be honest here, treason in many regards. I mean, the misuse of funds and then, basically sending a whole bunch more enforcers, I'm not going to use certain names and terms, after us that are armed to make sure that they audit and drain every last dime that we've got so that we can feed the bigger corruption machine. That's what you're looking at. That's what you're dealing with. Change on that level. Yes, it'll take bravery. It will probably cost many of us our lives if we try and stand up against that. But I'm approaching it from a much more personal level of what can you do in your own life right now? Where can you go and change it? Not just what's wrong. What can we do about it? Anyway, that's all I have for today. It's really awesome to be able to talk to you guys. I want to form a community here, and I want you to join up with me. And there's other guys like this too, and women online as well, that are coming up to the reality of, hey, none of this is working, and we need to change it all. And you need to really change your outlook on life and the way that you perceive things before you can even begin to take action. And that's a very important place to start. So that's pretty much it for today. I'm glad you could join me outside in the nice, somewhat warm weather. It's not completely warm. I still got to wear a little bit of a jacket to be out here, but got to enjoy the warm days when we got them. So if you haven't done it already, make sure you like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. I'm going to be making more videos coming up, and I'm looking forward to talking to you guys all again real soon. Have a great day. Get out and touch some grass, and get outside if you can, if it's nice where you are. I'll talk to you soon.